Okay, so you're fascinated by kinesiology, huh? You know, how the body moves, all the muscles and bones working together. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And you're ready to turn that fascination into a career. But first, the interview.
Yeah, it's like the pregame warm-up before the big game. And just like in kinesiology, where you analyze movements to really get what's going on, nailing an interview means breaking down those questions to figure out what they really want to know.
That's a great analogy. So let's dive into that with a question RoleCatcher says comes up a lot. Describe your experience in conducting movement assessments. I mean, they're going to want to hear about your hands-on skills here, right? What have you actually done?
Oh, absolutely. But it's not just about rattling off a list of assessments you've done. It's about showing them you understand what's happening beneath the surface. Like, what assessments are you most comfortable with and why those? How do you tweak your approach to fit each person and what they're aiming for? It's about showing you get the individual, not just the textbook stuff.
So instead of just saying, oh, I've done gait analysis and postural assessments,
Right, exactly. You'd want to say something more like, I've got a lot of experience with gait analysis. It's fascinating how even small imbalances can throw off someone's entire movement pattern. Like, in my last job, I used gait analysis to tailor exercise plans for people recovering from knee surgery, and I always made sure to factor in their limits and what they needed to achieve.
that's brilliant. You've woven in your actual experience, which interviewers eat up. Okay, let's say they dig a little deeper. What if they follow up with, what are some common movement dysfunctions you look out for during these assessments?
That's where your knowledge of anatomy and biomechanics really takes the stage. You know, biomechanics is all about how forces affect the body's movement. So, for instance, during a postural assessment, you might notice someone has that forward head posture. That can tell you there are certain muscles might be tight while others are weak.
You're like being a detective, right?
Yeah,
You're looking for those subtle clues to understand how everything is moving or not moving.
exactly. And once you've spotted those clues, you can make a plan to tackle them. So you might continue your answer by saying, if I saw forward head posture, I'd investigate further to figure out why maybe they're hunched over a computer all day, and then I'd design a set of exercises to address that, strengthening what's weak, stretching what's tight.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. You've connected the dots between what you see, what it means, and what you do about it. That's huge. Now, switching gears a bit, RoleCatcher also highlights this question. How do you stay up to date with the latest in kinesiology? And it's true, the field is always evolving.
It absolutely is. There's always new research, new techniques, and you've got to stay ahead of the game. So instead of just saying, oh, I read journals, you want to paint a picture of how you actively seek out new knowledge.
So how would you answer that in a way that really wows them?
You could say something like, I'm a big fan of the Journal of Applied Biomechanics, and I actually just went to this amazing conference on the newest stuff in sports injury rehab. Plus, I'm an active member of the American Kinesiology Association, which gives me tons of resources and helps me network with other professionals so we can all stay in the loop about the latest research and best practices.
I love that. You're not just reading a few articles here and there, you're really plugged into the field.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows you're serious about your development, which is huge.
Exactly. And to really drive that point home, you could even mention a specific research paper or a presentation that really resonated with you. Like, I was blown away by a recent study on using virtual reality in gait rehabilitation. I think that kind of technology has the potential to completely change how we approach rehab.
Ooh, good call. That brings in industry trends, which shows you're not just thinking about today, you're thinking about what's next. And speaking of trends, RoleCatcher's Career Guide says telehealth is becoming a big deal in kinesiology.
It really is. And interviewers might want to know what you think about this growing trend. They could ask something like, how do you see telehealth changing the future of kinesiology?
That's your chance to prove you understand where the field is heading. So what would be a strong answer to that?
You could say something like, telehealth has this incredible potential to bring kinesiology to people who might not have easy access to it otherwise, like those in rural areas or folks with mobility issues. I'm excited to see how we can use this technology to provide personalized care and support people no matter where they are, helping them achieve their goals.
That shows you're not just aware of telehealth, but you're genuinely enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
It hints at your flexibility and willingness to embrace new ways of doing things. Okay, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about something crucial in kinesiology, working with clients who have injuries or chronic conditions. RoleCatcher has a sample question about this, and it's a big one. How do you modify exercise programs for clients with injuries or chronic conditions?
This is where you prove you can adapt and personalize your approach, which is so important in this field. They want to know you can handle different needs and create plans that are both safe and effective. It's about showing you're not just going to hand them a generic workout sheet.
So how would you recommend someone tackles this question?
Start by emphasizing how important a thorough assessment is. You need to know their injury history, what they can and can't do, and what they want to achieve.
It's like detective work again, gathering all those clues to tailor the perfect plan.
Exactly. Then give them a specific example. Let's say you have a client with osteoarthritis in their knee. You could explain how you'd adjust exercises to minimize the stress on that joint.
So instead of simply saying, I'd modify exercises, you're painting a clear picture of what that actually looks like. How would you phrase it?
You could say, if a client had osteoarthritis in their knee, I'd focus on low-impact exercises like swimming or cycling because those are easier on the joints. I'd also incorporate exercises to strengthen the muscles surrounding the knee to make it more stable and hopefully reduce their pain.
That makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
You're showing you understand the condition and how to work with it, not against it. Okay, now, for a real curveball,
Yeah.
what if this client also had diabetes? How would that change things?
I love those. It's how they test if you really know your stuff.
Yeah.
And you know what? This is where RoleCatcher's AI can be a lifesaver. You can use their AI-powered interview practice to rehearse for these kinds of curveball questions and get feedback tailored to you.
I haven't actually seen that feature before.
Mhm.
How does RoleCatcher's AI analyze a job description to help you tailor your resume? That seems super useful.
It's amazing. You just upload your resume and the job description, and their AI picks out the important keywords, skills, and experience that match what they're looking for. Then, it suggests how to tweak your resume to highlight those things so you stand out, both to those applicant tracking systems and to the actual recruiters.
That's seriously impressive. Like having your own personal resume writer. Okay, back to our client with both osteoarthritis and diabetes. How would you approach that curveball?
Well, you'd want to show them you understand how exercise affects blood sugar in people with diabetes. You could explain, with a client who has diabetes, I'd be really mindful of their blood glucose levels before, during, and after exercise. We talk about the best times to exercise and eat, and I'd teach them how to recognize and manage any blood sugar swings.
Okay, now you're speaking their language. You've proven you can design a plan that doesn't just focus on one aspect of their health, but considers their whole well-being.
It's like you're a health detective, piecing together all the different parts of their health to create a plan that really works.
Absolutely. And that kind of thinking is what really impresses interviewers.
Okay, let's switch gears to something else RoleCatcher emphasizes. Client motivation. They even have a sample question about it. How do you motivate clients to stick to their exercise program? Because, let's be real, we all struggle with that sometimes.
Oh, for sure. And, it starts with building a good relationship with your client, that foundation of rapport and trust. You have to understand their goals, what drives them, even the things they struggle with. It's about creating a supportive environment where they feel comfortable.
It's like you become their cheerleader,
Yeah.
right? You're there for the high fives and to help them push through when things get tough.
Exactly. And setting realistic goals is key. Instead of aiming for a marathon on day one, let's break it down into smaller steps. Celebrate those victories along the way. It makes a huge difference.
That's such a good point. You're not trying to overhaul their whole life. You're making exercise a sustainable part of it. Okay, but what about those inevitable dips in motivation? We all have them. What do you do then? It happens. That's where staying connected with your client is crucial. Check in with them. See how things are going. Are there any roadblocks? Do we need to adjust the plan? Any new goals they're excited about? And never underestimate the power of positive reinforcement. Celebrating their progress, acknowledging their effort, those things can make a world of difference.
Create that positive feedback loop. Success fuels more success.
Okay, let's get a bit more technical for a sec. RoleCatcher also asks, describe your experience with biomechanical analysis. What are some key things to hit on there?
This is your time to really showcase those analytical skills and how well you understand how forces impact the way we move. You could talk about your experience using software to analyze movement patterns, doing gait analysis, or maybe how you pinpointed biomechanical factors that contributed to an injury.
So more than just, I've done some biomechanical analysis, you're painting a picture of your expertise. What would that sound like? Okay, for example, you could say, in my last role, I used motion capture technology to analyze how marathon runners were moving. This let me pick up on even slight imbalances and give them personalized advice to fine-tune their form and hopefully prevent injuries.
That's a great example. It clearly shows you know your stuff and how to use it in a real-world setting. What if they follow up with, tell me more about the software you used and how it helped?
See, that's why preparation is so important. Get familiar with the industry standard software like Dartfish or Vicon. Be ready to talk about what the software does, how you've used its features, and what you've learned from the analysis it provides.
It's like you have to become fluent in the language of biomechanics.
You got it. And speaking of languages, RoleCatcher emphasizes how vital clear communication is, especially when you're working alongside other healthcare professionals. They have a question about that too. How do you communicate with other healthcare professionals as part of a client's treatment team?
So important. Kinesiologists are often part of a bigger team, and everyone needs to be on the same page. How would you suggest showcasing your ability to communicate effectively in that kind of setting?
Start by highlighting the importance of clear, concise, and respectful communication. Explain that you know how important it is to share relevant information about the client's progress, any concerns you have, and any changes made to their exercise plan.
It's all about teamwork and making sure everyone is working towards the same goal, the client's well-being.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to emphasize that you're a team player and that you value the expertise of other healthcare professionals. You can say something like, I'm all about a collaborative approach to care, and I actively seek input from other professionals to make sure the client is getting the best possible treatment.
That shows you're not just focused on your little bubble, but on the bigger picture of the client's health journey. Okay, curveball time. How would you advise someone to handle a situation where there's a disagreement about a client's treatment plan? It happens, and they might ask about it.
Great question. It's bound to come up. If they ask, can you describe a time you had a challenging communication issue with another healthcare professional, and how did you resolve it? Focus on showing off those conflict resolution skills.
So how do you navigate that kind of tricky situation diplomatically while still advocating for what's best for the client?
You could say, whenever there are different opinions, I think it's important to approach the conversation respectfully and be willing to see things from their side. I would clearly explain my reasoning for the exercise plan I'm suggesting, while also really listening to the concerns and perspectives of my colleagues. I truly believe that open communication and a shared commitment to the client's well-being can lead to a solution that works for everyone.
That's such a mature and thoughtful approach to conflict, emphasizing empathy, open-mindedness, and finding common ground. Speaking of finding common ground, let's bring it back to the individual client. RoleCatcher really emphasizes how important it is to tailor exercise programs to each person's specific needs and goals. They ask, how do you develop individualized exercise programs for clients?
This question is all about showing them you can create personalized plans, not just cookie-cutter solutions. Because, newsflash, every client is unique.
Exactly. They have different needs, goals, and starting points.
Wow.
One size does not fit all in this field.
Right. It all begins with a thorough initial assessment. Emphasize how important it is to gather information not only about their physical abilities, but also their lifestyle, what they prefer, and what their limitations are.
So you're looking at the whole picture, not just their physical condition in isolation.
Exactly. Once you've got that comprehensive understanding, you can start setting realistic and achievable goals together with your client. It's a two-way street.
It's a team effort. Now, what if they ask for a specific example of a time you adapted an exercise program based on client feedback? It shows you're flexible and responsive, which are awesome qualities.
Absolutely. You could talk about a time when a client found certain exercises too hard or maybe not challenging enough. Explain how you took their feedback, adjusted the program, and made sure it worked for them both physically and in terms of progress.
It proves you're not just talking at them, you're listening and adjusting based on their needs. Okay, time for a deep dive into a specific exercise approach, functional training. RoleCatcher asks, how do you incorporate functional training into exercise programs? First things first, what is functional training and why is it such a big deal?
Functional training is all about doing exercises that mimic the movements we do in everyday life, making it easier to do those everyday things. It's like bridging the gap between the gym and real life.
So instead of just lifting weights in isolation, you're training your body to move well in ways that actually matter outside the gym. It makes exercise practical and applicable.
You got it. You're improving strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination in a way that directly translates to real-world stuff.
Love it. Can you give us some examples of functional exercises you might include in a program?
Sure thing. You could talk about exercises like squats, lunges, pushes, and pulls. These all mimic movements we do every day, like standing up from a chair, picking up groceries, or going upstairs. You could even say, I worked with a client who had just become a mom, and we focused on exercises that copied the movements she was already doing while taking care of her baby.
That's a perfect example. You've taken something that sounds kind of theoretical, functional training, and made it totally relatable.
Exactly. And that's what interviewers love to see, that you can take your knowledge and apply it to real people's lives.
Okay, time for a curveball. Imagine they ask, give me an example of a functional exercise you'd use for an older adult who has trouble with balance. How would you handle that?
I love that question. It lets you prove you can adapt those functional training principles to different people and situations. For an older adult who struggles with balance, I might suggest something like a single leg stance.
Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. With a single leg stance, the client would simply stand on one leg, maybe holding onto something sturdy for support at first. This helps them improve their balance and coordination, which can really lower their risk of falls. And preventing falls is huge for older adults who want to stay independent. I'd start slow and gradually have them hold the pose longer, or maybe try it with their eyes closed once they've built up some strength and confidence.
That's awesome. You've shown you understand the why behind the exercise and how to tailor it to meet a specific need. Now, let's shift gears again and talk about a more hands-on aspect of kinesiology, manual therapy. RoleCatcher asks, describe your experience with manual therapy techniques. What exactly is manual therapy, and what are some important things to remember when you're answering this question?
Manual therapy is basically a bunch of hands-on techniques used to assess and treat pain and problems with the muscles and bones. When you're answering this question, highlight what you know about the different techniques and when you'd use them.
So we're talking about massage, myofascial release, joint mobilization, that kind of thing.
You got it. Be ready to talk about your experience with these techniques and how they fit in with the exercise plans you create. For example, you could say, I often use myofascial release to loosen up tight muscles and address trigger points, which can limit someone's range of motion and cause them pain. By releasing those restrictions, they can move better and feel better overall.
That's a really clear and concise way to explain how you use those techniques. What if they dig a little deeper and ask, can you tell me about a time you used manual therapy to help a client with a specific problem? Those real-world examples are gold.
That's your chance to shine. Show them how you think clinically and solve problems. You could say something like, I once worked with a client who had chronic lower back pain. After assessing them, I noticed their hip flexors were really tight and their thoracic spine had limited mobility. So I combined a few different manual therapy techniques. I used myofascial release on those tight hip flexors and did some joint mobilizations on their thoracic spine. Then I gave them specific exercises to address those areas. This multi-pronged approach really helped ease their pain and got them moving better overall.
It's like you're a detective again, but this time you're using your hands to gather clues and treat the issue. Okay, let's move from hands-on therapy to something that's essential for anyone job hunting, acing the interview itself. RoleCatcher has these amazing AI tools to help people prepare, and I have to say, I'm really curious about their AI-powered interview practice.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about how that works?
It's seriously cool. Basically, you record yourself answering common interview questions. Then the AI analyzes your video. It looks at your tone of voice, how fast you're talking, how clear you are, even your body language.
Whoa, hold on. It analyzes all of that.
It really does. And get this, it gives you personalized feedback. Like, it might suggest ways to improve your delivery, speak more clearly, or even project more confidence. It can even pick up on things like if you're using too many filler words.
That's incredible. It's like having your own personal interview coach in your pocket. So RoleCatcher doesn't just give you insightful resources like sample interview questions and career guidance. They also give you these really advanced AI tools to help you perfect those interview skills.
Exactly. They're there for you every step of the way, from figuring out if this is the right career path for you to absolutely nailing that interview.
Okay, before we wrap up our deep dive into kinesiology interviews, let's zoom out and look at some broader career stuff. RoleCatcher's career guide has some really useful information about the typical work environment, industry trends, and even the good and not so good parts of being a kinesiologist. Let's start with the work environment. What can people expect in terms of the settings they might work in?
Kinesiologists work in a ton of different places: hospitals, clinics, fitness centers, rehab centers, even private practice. You might also find them working in corporate wellness programs, ergonomics, or research.
It's a pretty diverse field with lots of potential career paths. You're not just stuck in one type of setting.
For sure. And the actual work environment can be super different depending on where you end up. Like working in a busy sports medicine clinic is going to feel completely different from working in a private practice or a research lab.
That makes a lot of sense. So how can candidates use this information to their advantage during an interview?
It all comes down to showing the interviewer that you've done your research and that you understand what you're getting into. If you're interviewing at a fast-paced sports medicine clinic, you could ask about the team dynamic or the types of cases they typically see.
It's about showing them you're genuinely interested and making sure your expectations match up with reality.
Exactly. Or let's say you're interviewing for a research position at a university. You could ask about their current research projects or how they share their findings.
It's all about finding that perfect fit. Now let's talk about something we touched on earlier, industry trends. RoleCatcher keeps mentioning telehealth as a growing area in kinesiology. What's the deal with that?
Telehealth is definitely shaking things up in healthcare, and kinesiology is no exception. It's basically using technology to deliver healthcare services remotely, and it's becoming more and more common in this field.
So are we going to see more virtual assessments, consultations, and even exercise programs being delivered online?
Absolutely. This is a great opportunity for candidates to show they're aware of these trends and ready to embrace new technologies. They could say something like, "I think it's awesome how telehealth is making kinesiology services accessible to people who might not have access otherwise, like people in remote areas or those who have trouble getting around."
It paints a picture of someone who is forward-thinking and adaptable. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. What about the downsides of being a kinesiologist? RoleCatcher mentions that while it's a super rewarding field, it can also be physically demanding and emotionally draining at times. How can candidates talk about these aspects during an interview without scaring off potential employers?
It's all about being honest and showing them that you've thought about both the amazing parts of the job and the tougher parts. For instance, you could say, "I know that this job can be physically demanding. I might be on my feet for long hours, but I'm really passionate about helping people improve their lives through movement, and that's what motivates me to keep going even when it's challenging."
So you're acknowledging the realities of the job, but also emphasizing your dedication and resilience.
Exactly. It's also a chance for you to ask them some insightful questions about the work environment and what kind of support they offer. For example, you could ask, "What does your organization do to prevent burnout and support the well-being of your kinesiologists?"
That shows you're proactive and that you value self-care, which are great qualities in any employee.
Absolutely. It all comes down to finding the right fit for you and making sure you're stepping into a work environment that supports your growth and well-being.
This has been an amazing deep dive into the world of kinesiology interviews. We really have. I feel like we just crammed a whole semester of kinesiology interview prep into like an hour.
And just like with any good workout, the key to acing those interviews is preparation, dedication, and having the right gear.
Speaking of the right gear, RoleCatcher has been a total game changer, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Their resources are a goldmine for anyone trying to navigate this whole job search process, especially in a field as awesome and competitive as kinesiology.
No doubt about it. They give you that extra edge, which can make all the difference when you're up against a ton of other qualified candidates.
So true. All right, for all of you future kinesiologists out there, let's recap those key takeaways from our deep dive. Number 1, do your homework. Understand the job description inside and out. Research the company. Know what you're getting into.
Couldn't agree more. When you walk into that interview prepared, you automatically feel more confident and it shows them you're serious.
Number 2, let your passion shine. Interviewers can totally tell when you're genuinely excited about kinesiology, and that energy is contagious.
It really is. Passion is what makes a good kinesiologist great, and it makes a good candidate stand out.
And finally, number 3, embrace the power of technology. Use those cool AI tools RoleCatcher offers, like the Resume Optimizer and Interview Practice, to fine-tune your approach and boost your confidence.
Think of it like having a secret weapon in your back pocket, one that's specifically designed to help you succeed.
Exactly. And most importantly, believe in yourself. You've got the knowledge, the passion, and with a little prep work, you'll absolutely crush that interview and land your dream job in the incredible world of kinesiology.
I'm cheering you on. Good luck, everyone.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into acing those kinesiology interviews. We hope you're walking away feeling empowered and ready to take that next step. And hey, don't forget about RoleCatcher. They've got tons of amazing resources to support you on your journey. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep moving towards your goals.